They saved amateur hour for after lunch, so I'm the first non-general, non-doctor to get to address you guys today. But I am a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, and one of the things that really became apparent to me after a tour in Iraq and spending about 4.5 years of my life in Afghanistan was the need to redefine how we led each other. And it's really important in the veteran community because we have a pretty antiquated version of leadership. And if you mention the word love in many circles of leadership, you'll probably get an adverse reaction. It's because we misunderstand the word, right? If you look up love in a dictionary, you're going to get something that has to do with affection, right? So whenever I would mention it in leadership circles, I get this notion of that I'm going to coddle someone. And I can assure you, I rank discipline as one of the first measures of love. So I was not always a nice person, but I was a person that led with love. And I began to see it more and more as I transitioned out as a way to illuminate the path for others. Because we had people that were struggling, and we had a hard time accepting the diagnosis that we were given. We had a hard time accepting the medications that we were being given. So maybe do I have a slide advancer up here somewhere I can advance it? All right, so my story, where does it begin? On a path of healing. So the gentleman on the end of the string with me, his name is Ivan, and you may recognize that venue if you're a local. It's the Boston Marathon. So Ivan, I met in 2007 after he'd been blown off a roof in Iraq. He'd had his right eye blown out. The shrapnel went back behind his left eye, cut his optic nerve. It had deflated his lung, cut his vertebral artery. He was bleeding out through his neck. So his physical wounds were significant. And so I come up on the scene and I'm like, wow, I can really help this guy. I'm an ultramarathoner and there's nothing wrong with me. Until I attached myself to the end of the string. Because the compassion from him was healing me. And so I started to think, you know what? Maybe these invisible wounds that we have, this weight that we are carrying, it's worse than these physical wounds. And I won't compare the two. Ivan and I have run 42 marathons together. We've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. We've run with the bulls. We've run across the Sahara Desert together. We spent a lot of time pontificating, right? And on these things. And the thing that's grown the most in me over that period of time is how much not only that we need each other, right, the cliche, the interconnectedness that we need to heal veteran to veteran, that we need to be out there together doing it, but that how many people observing that are healed, right? Because compassion isn't just me to him, him to me. It's all the people that see that. And, it just, I don't know why, I had trouble getting there, but I did. And the more I sit in rooms like this when we talk about veterans' mental health, I went through that same system. And if you're a veteran, you probably have went through similar thing. Somebody wants to tell you that you have PTSD, and I'm like, what? I mean, the stuff like we're loud noises and I want to go hide? No, I do not have that. What do I have? I hear a loud noise, I want to run and find out what it is. And if it's a threat to me or somebody I love, I'm going to neutralize the threat. And trust me, my brain, I've already considered 18 variables of how I can neutralize that threat before you've even thought of it. It's like, what do I have a problem with? Going to sleep. What do I have a problem with? Wanting to kill people that probably don't need to be killing because they're maybe bad, but maybe not that bad. That's what I have a problem with. It's like, I was in from 1986 to 2016. So 30 years of my life split neatly by 9/11. 15 years before, 15 years after. I was like, I have a combat mind. You want to help me get rid of my combat mind? I don't have post-traumatic stress, right? I can't sleep. I want to go, right? High order, nuclear on threats, but I don't need Lexapro. I am not depressed. I don't need gabapentin. Oh, by the way, we had an interesting discussion. Any vet that's been in here that's even went anywhere near a PTSD diagnosis from the VA has probably been pushed gabapentin. Don't take it, it's terrible. And when you tell the VA it makes you a raging lunatic, they will say that, irritability is not listed as one of the side effects of this medicine. But it absolutely is from everybody that's taken it. So, but yeah, the VA has the standard list of medicines that they will push at you. And most, if not all, are unhelpful. In some ways, the opposite of helpful. And so how do we get this combat mind? And what is another way that we mess up the notion of love? Right? And I would submit to you, and there have been several people who've talked about spirituality, including Dr. Koenig, who I very much enjoyed. Whether you are a Christian or not, in America, our culture is heavily influenced by the symbol on that slide. Right? And in our mind, even if we do not believe in Jesus Christ, God, that symbol is a symbol of perfect love making a perfect sacrifice. So that's built into our culture. So you're thinking to yourself, so what? Well, if you're a guy like me, other folks have been talking about us, right? The special forces guy, SOF personnel. That's how we're wired. To start with, you can't run farther than I can. I'll run 100 miles to prove that you can't. You can't carry more than I can. I'll carry 150 pounds on my back to prove that you can't. You can't run faster, you can't run farther, you can't do more. Because I will sacrifice more. I will be more miserable. I'll go farther, faster, harder. Study more. Jump out of more planes. Hit my head on the ground more often. Dive under the water. What do you want me to do? Stupid human tricks? I got them. But therein lies the barrier to healing. Because what have I never admitted to myself? Because it's the opposite. How do you get through all that shit? It's not muscle power. It's the knowledge that you can do it. Right? It's the brain. How do you run 100 miles? I don't know, tree to tree, step at a time. It's never admitting that you can't. And now all of a sudden, somebody tells you have PTSD. Excuse me, are you saying I'm mentally weak? Are you telling me the same person that did all of these things is now mentally weak? Is that what you're trying to convince me? Right? You would have better chance of convincing me to cut off my foot right now than to do that. So don't tell me that. And so we have a culture that idealizes the perfect sacrifice. And we built a culture of people willing to do exactly that. You want to talk about moral injury? Do I have moral injury from anything I did in combat? I can assure you I do not. You know where my moral injury comes from? Watching an investment of a decade and a half in Afghanistan, friendships, brotherhoods developed and let to twist in the wind. You want to know where my moral injury comes? From abandonment. Abandonment of my friends. So I don't think many people that are looking at the issue have a fundamental understanding of what they're actually talking about or who they are treating. Because I've been out for almost a decade. I don't care what anybody thinks about me at this point. You go to somebody that's still wearing a uniform, I can guarantee you they care. Their ego is still attached. Even if they don't care about being promoted, even if they don't care about benefits or any of that, they still have this belief in their own ability to never fail. And until we can create an environment of compassion and bring them into it, and as much as I hate this word, safe space, I hate it, create a safe space to bring them in and allow them to heal in a non-damaged way. I am not damaged. I have a combat mind. I will always have a combat mind. I have tried many things to get rid of my combat mind. It persists. I had a friend of the Heroes Wellness Collective. I won't name him, in case he doesn't want. But he told me one time, and this goes back to the ACEs story earlier. A normal person that experiences trauma, that doesn't have early childhood trauma is like moss on the lake. It comes into their life and it floats away. He said, but somebody with childhood trauma, they have a weed planted in the lake and the moss just collects on it. So to the ACEs score, when you have that weed planted in the middle of the lake and the moss is collecting, it requires much more intervention to get rid of it. Which brings me to somebody who will follow. I do not know the basis of his talk, but he said he's going to talk about research into psychedelics. And I think that's another place where we've, again, I preface my comments by, I'm not a general nor a doctor, just a dude. And as just a dude, I will tell you that we are missing the boat on helping our veterans with plant medicines. There are many plant medicines out there. I've seen many, many people helped. People recovered from tremendously hopeless situations, get their brains reset, gain neuroplasticity, and become more in touch with their spirituality, and go on to lead great lives after every other intervention failed. So, anecdotally, I'm a believer. Okay, so lessons from healing. So these are pictures of my friend Ivan and I doing the Marathon des Sables, which is, for those of you that would be interested in a sufferfest. It's 6 days in the Sahara Desert where you carry everything that you're going to eat, sleep, or wear for your 6 days. You do get water and a wool blanket every night to make a tent out of. So during this 5 days across the desert, Ivan and I really had a lot of time to think about some of the lessons learned. And this came after, like I said, a decade and a half of running together. And we started talking about the things that we knew, or we thought we knew. Turns out when you're walking across the sand dune, you have a lot of time to talk about these things. That the wounds that are the most damaging, or can be the most damaging, hide in plain sight. Right? So you can see all these veterans, but you can't really tell which one is still carrying the weight. It's not obvious. It's not like he's carrying around, an 80-pound block. He or she is carrying around an 80-pound block. So creating that place where you illuminate their path with love and you connect to them and you allow them to put the weight down, that's when you can help them heal. Telling them they're depressed, telling them they need medication, relating to them in a way that attacks who they are is unhelpful. And one of the other things, after many, many miles, and somebody else will speak much more eloquently on this than I am when Mike Sullivan gets up here and talks about Team Red, White, and Blue, is that physical activity, specifically physical activity with your former members of your military organization, people that understand you, is tremendously helpful. And we ignore that, or, yeah, okay, great. That's one of those touchy-feely things, but, let's get to medications or other, verified treatments. We negate some of these things that are extremely helpful to our peril. Because I know in my case, the things that have been the most helpful to me, like connecting with my brother, feeling his compassion for me being able to give him compassion, us exercising together, us allowing space for other people to enter and use love as a healing modality has been incredibly powerful. And for me and for other people that I've met along the way. So while I do not discount any of the treatments that are being studied or advocated for, I think we are ignoring, although we've heard a lot of talk about, or we've heard some talk today about spirituality, which I think is one of the things where we're on the right track. Your connection to each other and to the universe, God, whatever you want to, your spirituality is extremely, extremely important. And those are just lessons from some guy. But I know over my travels with Ivan, through the streets of Pamplona, being chased by bulls, up Mount Kilimanjaro with NFL players, where Earlier you heard someone talk about concussion events of NFL players. Had that very same discussion in a gigantic tent on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro with several NFL players. And one of the things that they said that brought me right back to connectedness was, we love this, being in this tent with you guys. So it's just veterans and NFL players, because you miss getting everything ready and planning and getting us all ready to hike for the day. And we miss sitting in this tent like a locker room with you guys. So it's like this beautiful synergy of veterans and former NFL players that just has a wonderful effect. And just for General Hammond, I got that picture in there of when we did heads together with home base. So one of the times we ran marathons, we ran Boston on Monday with home base, and we flew to London. And that Saturday, 5 days later, we ran the London Marathon for Prince Harry's charity, Heads Together. So we were out there trying. And the last photo I'll talk about on that slide, just to give you the impact of another program I thought was hugely beneficial. And our friend Zabiullah from the Afghan commandos was there to witness some of these. So I'm sure Zabiullah could tell you some of the other interesting things that went on. But the Defense Department had a program for a while they called Proper Exit. And they would send wounded service members back to Afghanistan to leave, upright. And so the best story I have is, so Ivan, as you can see in front of me, was blind. He's back he's in Afghanistan. And I wanted to let him and one other service member who had lost both of his legs and his left arm in an IED attack, so he could see and he had a right arm. So I put the kid with the right arm in the side of the side-by-side that had a machine gun, told him he could fire the machine gun, and put Ivan, who had his arms and legs and could drive, couldn't see, behind the in the driver's seat, and told him, okay, I want you guys to go down range and start shooting targets. So away they went, and the people who had escorted him said, wow, we heard you SF guys were different, but we just didn't know how different. I'm like, why? There's one guy that can see. What can go wrong here? Anyway, so I know that I've taken more time than I probably had, and to keep this on track, I'll leave you with this message. If I could ask anything of you, any call to action I might leave you with is create spaces of love. Actually care about people. Lead with it. Start with it. It will change the entire discussion that we're having on mental health in our veteran population. Peace.